The playbook is typically psychological abusers all follow the same guidelines. They're all going to gaslight you. They're all going to blame you for everything that's wrong in their lives. They take zero accountability for their actions. Everything is your fault. Zero empathy. So if you are hurt or you require medical assistance, they're going to be angry with you because they don't understand why you're hurt and you can't cater to them. Lack of empathy. Once you leave the relationship, they'll start the smear campaign. So they'll create a narrative of you being the problem. Everything was your fault once again, and they are the victim. So everything that they are doing to you to make your life a living HE double hockey sticks.
You can say it here. A living hell.
Yes, they actually project onto you, right? And they say that you're doing all of those terrible things. And they reach out to your family, your friends, anyone that knows you, and they give this false narrative to make themselves look good and make you look bad.
Welcome to the Holly Hall Show. Let us explore the deeper meaning and purpose of life. This show delves into the mysteries of spirituality, the nature of consciousness, and the pursuit of the transcendence in the world that often feels chaotic and confusing. Each episode features thought-provoking conversations with experts in the field of philosophy, psychology, spirituality, and more. Sit back, relax. I want to just take my glasses off for part of it. Okay, there we go. Hello, everyone. You're listening to the Holly Hall Show. Again, I'm talking to today Alana Sharps. She's a high conflict divorce lawyer. I know there's a few more words that go with that too, and also an author. You're going to be quite fascinated about how she got to where she is today, how it is her spiritual passion and her soul mission to do that, plus something that has offshooted from that. And we'll let you know that closer to the end of the podcast. So you're going to want to stay tuned because that's quite fascinating. But I'm going to let Alana introduce herself. And even at some point, we'll talk about how we met and how I have assisted her in making some decision and choices as well with my job that I have. As you guys all know, I'm a master astrologer with a background education in philosophy and psychology and neurolinguistic programming. And I have a good tight-knit, large group of clients that I work with on a regular basis, plus some new ones that come into play when I'm working with them throughout the weeks. So, Alana, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes. So let's start off by, what do you do? What is your job now?
Okay, well, I'm an author and I'm also a high conflict divorce and child custody consultant. And I know that's a lot of words and a lot of people don't understand what I do, so I will explain. I was in a psychologically abusive relationship for 16 years. And after I left that relationship, I went into the realm of post-separation abuse. My ex was abusing me through the legal system and also financially abusing me by depleting my financial resources. And as I went through the experience, I noticed that no one understood what I was going through, not even my attorney. And I felt very alone during the process. So I decided to become a certified high conflict divorce and child custody consultant so that I can help others that are currently going through the same experience. They feel alone, they don't understand how the legal system works, and they don't understand how to fight back during the process.
Wow. And how long was that battle for you?
Let's see, I would say about 4 years.
Wow. That's a long time. You know, and you've given me a new word to use as well, because I work with a lot of clients that will talk about this exact process that you're going through or went through and what they're going through. And then their children get involved in this abuse as well. And I've never used that word abuse. Like, do you recognize that you're being abused? I usually look at it as manipulation. They don't want to let go of their relationship. So this is their way of hanging on to, negatively hanging on to somebody or negatively hanging on to a relationship, and or they're just very possessive, you know, depending on when I look at their chart, I can kind of tell the other person's personality trait. Now, what is your book and where can people find it? And what is it about?
My book is Was It My Fault? And people can find it on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble or any bookstore for that matter. You can purchase it online. And the book is about my story. So how I tell my story is through education. I tell you what's going on in my marriage, and then I also educate you. So I'll give you explanations for terms like gaslighting or what a toxic relationship is. And then at the end of my story, I give you resources. So if you're in an abusive relationship currently, I tell you a safe way to get out, how to come up with a safety plan, how to contact attorneys, how to find the right attorney, how to find a source of income, like a part-time job if you need one, or companies that'll help you find work during the process, as well as how to stock up on things that you need to rebuild your life, like how to put toilet paper and, all your home essentials, like purchase those before you leave. There's a process to that. You could do that in a way that your abuser doesn't know that you're planning to leave the home. So I give all of those details in my story.
That's very interesting. So did you have that plan, or did you figure out later, I should have had that plan?
I had that plan.
Wow. So it took you, so it was almost like an escape
Yes,
plan.
it was an escape plan. Yes. I had to find the safest way to leave the home for me. And actually, from the moment I told my ex I was leaving up until I was finally able to get out of the house, it was 60 days. And I literally slept with one eye open for that 60-day time span because the abuse ramped up during that time period because he did not want me to leave him.
That's interesting. I had a very short relationship like that. It was about 6 months. And my daughter was 3, and she actually still remembers the mean guy that got her a black cat because he bought her a little black kitten during that time. And I never had a relationship like that. That's probably I've had psychological kind of his personality kind of abuse, I suppose. But this one was almost like a stalker. Like he knew I wanted to leave him at a few times, and he started controlling my life. Where are you going? Why did it take you so long? To the point where I really got super angry. And then when I got really angry, he called the police saying that he was abused. And I was like, what the heck? I've never experienced anything like that.
The smear campaign. Yes.
And yeah. And he pushed me to that point. Really what I did was I went to slap his face because he was calling me, all these really terrible names.
Right.
And accusing me of things I wasn't even doing. So for that, it was almost like I needed to have that 6-month relationship to know, whoa, like I knew as soon as I saw the first sign that he was like that, because he wasn't like that until we moved in together, which was like 5 months. Then I was like, I'm out of here.
That's
like
good.
right away, I knew, but I had to make a plan. I didn't have the money, and we owned a house suddenly, and I had to save up. But then there was one weekend where my daughter was witnessed a tiny bit of it. She got brought home from the babysitter, and he was in the heat of it. And I just walked out right then, and I figured it out.
For you. Good for you. That's hard to do. I commend you for recognizing it so early in the relationship.
Yeah, I'm the control freak. You don't control me. It was, I had been, and I think I was older, I was older too. I was close to my 40s. So that may make a big difference as well. And I had been independent since I was 18. So it wasn't like I was afraid to be independent. I definitely wasn't prepared though, but I definitely could see how people could get wrapped up in, specifically when you have a child involved. But I had been a single mom for 3 years before that. So I was fine going back being a single mom again. But yeah, I can definitely see how and he tried to do the manipulation of you're this and you're that and you're no good and you're not, whatever. And he had that in his previous relationship for years and years with his child's mother. So I think he was going to do the same thing with me. Because after I left, he tried everything, sending me poems, sending me, forgiveness, and I'm sorry, and I'll never do it again. And I was like, yeah, no, that doesn't work for me.
Yes.
Yeah. So is that that's interesting. So what does that mean? Explain that to our viewers, the playbook.
The playbook is typically psychological abusers all follow the same guidelines. They're all going to gaslight you. They're all going to blame you for everything that's wrong in their lives. They take zero accountability for their actions. Everything is your fault, and they have zero empathy. So if you are hurt or you require medical assistance, they're going to be angry with you because they don't understand why you're hurt and you can't cater to them. Lack of empathy. Once you leave the relationship, they'll start the smear campaign. So they'll create a narrative of you being the problem. Everything was your fault once again, and they are the victim. So everything that they are doing to you to make your life a living HE double hockey sticks.
You can say it here. A living hell.
Yes, they actually project onto you, right? And they say that you're doing all of those terrible things. And they reach out to your family, your friends, anyone that knows you, and they give this false narrative to make themselves look good and make you look bad. And when you get into the legal space, they do it legally, which makes things even harder for you when you're wrapped up in court cases.
Wow. And the lawyers love that, don't they?
Yes, because it's a money grab for attorneys, right? The longer you stay in chaos, the more money you're raking up in legal fees.
You know, I didn't see the connection, and this is serendipitous that I had, that this is a connection, because my previous interview, which I just put up last week, is that she is a conscious lawyer. And that's what happened, is she found so much conflict between parents and looking at what it was doing to the children. She ended up bringing mindfulness into it. And now she's kind of let go of her practice, but now she works with other lawyers on how to be conscious lawyers.
I
so
love
that they, right? I mean, why isn't this normal?
Right.
Why is it abnormal? Like, it took her years to come to terms with becoming that type of lawyer, because it was so much against the narrative. And she could lose business, or you can get wrapped up in making money,
Right.
too, and having that standard of living.
Exactly.
And
Because it's a business.
is that important? Yeah.
Right.
And I guess that comes down to your value systems. Is what's important to you, your personal value systems, your passion, or money?
That's exactly right.
So who do you work with? Who are typically your clients?
They're typically women who are in the process of leaving, or they've already left, and their abuser has started filing child custody papers against them. Basically, the abuser is trying to take the children, is what it comes down to. And they either want 100% custody, or they want 50-50 custody in certain situations. However, the mothers coming out of the abusive situations, they're called protective mothers because they're trying to protect their children from being abused as well, even though the kids typically have already experienced abuse while they were all living in the same home as a family. I discovered that after I left my relationship. So it gets drawn out because the mothers want to collaborate. However, the abuser does not want to collaborate. They do not want to negotiate on anything, even things that are reasonable. They do not want to negotiate on. So you spend many hours going back and forth on, okay, mom, what can you live with? Because he's not going to give you this. That's what I work with on a lot of my clients on. I tell them to pick three things. Pick your wish list, like, this is what I absolutely want to happen. Number 2, pick what you can live with. And number 3, pick what you absolutely cannot live with, so that we can give multiple options to your ex and come up with an agreement.
Do you work only with local clients, or do you work across, like, internationally?
Yeah. Nationwide. I'm not as familiar with international laws. The US laws are pretty much the same. It may vary from state to state, but the process in dealing with this type of person is the same no matter what state you live in.
So how would somebody get a hold of you? What are your contacts?
I have a website. It's sirthrivetribe.com. You can also reach me on my social media at Alana Sharps and at Thrive Tribe.
Survive Tribe?
Thrive. So it's the word survivor and thriving pushed together. So it's
okay.
SUR.
Thrive.
Yep. Thrive Tribe. Yep. Okay. A tribe of people.
Yep. I think a lot of women could use you. In fact, I might start recommending you to some clients that could use that support. And now, prior to your marriage, and you don't have to tell the story at all, but was there anything in your childhood that programmed you to accepting a marriage like this?
There was, and I didn't find this out until I went into therapy to heal from the marriage. As the therapist started working with me, she started asking me questions about my mother. Now, my mother would talk to me a certain way. She was condescending at times. She always wanted me to be this perfect little replica of her. And so I grew up, it became my normal to be talked to a certain way, to be talked down to pretty much be emotionally abused, for lack of a better term. And I didn't know any other way. So when my ex-husband started talking to me in that way, I didn't notice that it was abuse because, hey, that's how mom spoke to me. So it's just something that you deal with. But in reality, it's abuse, and it's not something that you should put up with.
I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, but yes, that was the link. It was my mother.
I think I remember when we did one of our readings together, because we've done a few sessions together, that I had mentioned your mom.
Right.
Right from the get-go. The first
You
10
did.
minutes, first time I
You
talked
did.
to a client, the first 10 minutes I talk about their childhood.
You did. And it brought tears to my eyes that you could just pull that out of my chart because you were spot on.
Yeah, it's very helpful to make that connection, because we birth ourselves into the life that we do with those parents that we have. As much as some people think, why would I ever do something like that? But your contribution to the world now, in part, has to do with that childhood. And that childhood led you into that type of marriage. And I always tell people, if you can find a nugget or any kind of tiny silver lining around your childhood of truth that speaks to you, that will tell you why you came here, what is your mission, what's your purpose. And it might come out of malice or hatred or complete sadness or depression, but there is a reason or something we are supposed to learn from one or both of our parents or our childhood experience, that we have to utilize, either heal as an adult so that we grow, or we use it to contribute to society somehow as our job, or volunteer, writing a book, etc. So good for you for finding that nugget. It's not easy. Some people are in their 50s and 60s and 70s and still are like, what was my life all about? I don't get it. Kind of thing. So not an easy thing to do. So somehow this has led you into looking at the abuser, and you've got a little bit of a mind. I remember remember your chart, and you've got that mind of a psychotherapist. So you kind of dig deep, that investigator, and you kind of dig deep to find out the meaning behind everything. Why do they do this? Why did this happen? What's the purpose? Therefore, what was the common denominator that you found? Because researching for you to get out of your situation taught you that you're not the only one going through this.
That's exactly right. So I did a lot of research, and I became a part of a lot of communities of people going through similar experiences. And we all had the same story. That's what really shocked me, is I would read people's stories and I felt like I was reading my own. Like, you just had to change the name and it was the exact same experience. It's crazy to me. But based on my experience and everything that I did wrong during the process, I learned from my mistakes. Like I said, I learned the playbook, and then I learned how to combat it. And now I educate others on how to combat the playbook. And I've been working with survivors for the past 3 years, and I want to get more on trying to prevent abusive behavior. So I'm trying to educate what would-be abusers on, hey, you may have these tendencies, because I think a lot of times, sometimes in the sports realm, especially professional sports, people will get accused of sexual assault. I'm not saying that everyone that gets accused of sexual assault is not guilty. You have to know the facts in the situation. But I do think a lot of times with athletes, especially athletes that were playing as young as 8 years old and up, that they are conditioned a certain way to dominate and take control of their environments. And they're not told no, and they don't have accountability. So if you're never told no and you don't have accountability and you want something, I think they get into dating situations where a woman told them no, they didn't accept the no, and then they start to force themselves onto that woman because they don't know that it's wrong. They've never been told that that was wrong. So I like to educate, get in early, educate, and say, hey, these tendencies, these things do you think that you're entitled to or you don't think are wrong is actually illegal, and you
Mhm,
shouldn't do them. No means no. We should listen to the word no, and we should
mhm.
accept it. And then there's also the nonverbal cues of no, right? So we as women, we may not explicitly say no, but our body language will say no. We'll slide over to the other side of the couch when the guy comes to come near us, or we say that we don't feel well, or we're ready to leave. We'll give cues that are saying no, that the man a lot of times does not see or does not understand. So I'm trying to educate both sides of the coin on these things to try to cut down on abusive, sexual assault and abusive situations that are currently happening in society.
So there's a few things I'm getting from that. That's excellent. One is, if in the athletic world, we're looking at, when I look at people's astrological charts, if I see a lot of fire in their chart, specifically like Aries, a lot of first house stuff, a lot of a heavy Mars in the chart, I will see right away a competitive edge, somebody that likes competition, somebody that likes to win, somebody that is combative. And that typically makes good athletes. Like I'll say right away, were you an athlete, or had you been an athlete? Are you interested in any type of competitive type of career, or even when you were younger? And 90% of the time they'll say, yeah, I was an athlete when I was younger. If you don't continue to use that, because it's a strong adrenal gland, testosterone, whether you're a woman or a man approach, then it will turn into anger. It will turn into frustration. It will turn into competing with my wife, competing with my husband, ruthlessly competing at work. And lo and behold, you become an athlete and a professional one, then it doesn't stop, right? And then you continue in that can be unhealthy version of competition, because there is a healthy version of competition or self-competition. That's very interesting. So you believe that it can be turned around, that if you nip it in the bud, if you catch it early, then there is a possibility that the person, the abuser, can recognize their behavior and recognize the programming around it, and that the partner or the people that love them, their loved ones, can possibly help them turn it around.
I do. Now, in instances of personality disorders, I do not think that that is the case. So people with, we call them cluster B personality disorders, narcissistic personality disorder, or bipolar disorder. I'm not clear that they can be educated, because a lot of times there's a lot of things going on in their brain that reason does not help with, or educating does not help with. But I think that if you recognize that you've done things wrong in the past and you have empathy, I do think that you could be educated on how to go down the right path, and what are the clues to look for? What are the signs you need to look out for? And you can change.
So what are those clues? What are the signs that you can recognize your partner has sympathy and empathy and the ability to change?
I'll just use my own situation. So when I was pregnant with my children, I was extremely sick. I had a rare pregnancy disorder called hyperemesis gravidarum, where it was constant nausea and vomiting. I had to go to the emergency room multiple times. Okay. An empathetic person would have empathy for that. They'd want to take me to the emergency room. They'd want to help me when I was sick, when I couldn't stand up half the time. My ex-husband didn't want to do anything like that. He got mad when he had to take me to the emergency room. He got mad that I was sick because I couldn't cater to him. So that's a sign of someone that has a lack of empathy. I was in tears crying at one point, and he showed zero empathy for me. He was angry at me because I didn't feel well, and he had to take me to the doctor.
Wow.
major sign.
I've
Um,
heard stories like that before. Go ahead.
mhm. People that will tell you that you're wrong when you tell them, you made me feel a certain way when you said this, or you hurt my feelings, and they tell you,
Mhm,
you took it wrong. That's not what I
mhm,
said. You're crazy.
mhm,
You have the problem. You hurt my feelings when you said blah, 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 right? The tit for tat. That's a
mhm,
sign. That's gaslighting, because you
mhm,
know what you saw, you know what you heard, and they're telling you that what you saw and heard is incorrect. And they do that continuously. And when you call them out on it, instead of thinking about it and saying, hey, well, maybe I did say that, they double down and they start
mhm,
saying even more that you're wrong, you're the crazy person, you don't know what you're talking about.
mhm. Wow.
And then the
Okay,
lack of the lack of accountability, right?
mhm,
So they've clearly done something wrong. They won't admit that they did something wrong.
mhm.
It's your fault.
And
Everything is your fault.
women that are naturally natural nurturers, or
Yes,
they're caregivers, they have a tendency to think, oh, I didn't know it bothered you so much. I guess I am the one that's wrong. I'm not considering your feelings.
correct.
And I've heard that too. I've heard people say, well, and I liked what I talk to my clients about as well is that men compartmentalize and they do that very well. Women don't do that very well. They connect one thing to another, to another, to another. And sometimes we forget to compartmentalize. There's nothing wrong with addressing your situation first and saying, okay, I hear what you just said. You said that I did something that hurt you as well. Let's address that later. But first, let's address mine. Let's separate the two. They don't have to
Right.
belong to each other, or one doesn't have to trump the other one.
The
So
other.
now it's no longer important. It's not to be
Exactly.
discussed.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that would be a healthy relationship. What I just described is an unhealthy relationship. So
Right.
that's part of my education as well, right? What does a healthy relationship look like versus an unhealthy relationship? And
Mhm,
I give all of those examples that I just explained to you.
mhm. Yeah, that would make a lot of sense. So, what is your passion now moving forward with your career?
My passion is to keep doing what I'm doing, expand my reach and educate more, get into colleges and universities and get into the professional sports organizations to try to educate us more, offering training programs on what we're discussing today.
Mhm. And I know you're in the midst of doing that right now, and there's a lot that you can't disclose at this point because it's in the works of being created, and I understand that that could compromise things if you share too much. But I want everyone who's listening to look out because there's a future here for Alana Sharp in helping on a grander scale. And before we wrap this up, is there any advice for anyone listening that's nodding their head going, that's me, that's me, that's me? What's the maybe the first few steps that you would give them to help them move forward or
Move
move
forward.
past this? Yeah.
I actually came up with a nice little list of tips here. So when you're
I'm
an
just hopping.
yes, when you're an entrepreneur or you're starting something new, right? You're going to fail. Always expect failure. Nothing comes out 100% correct whenever you're starting anything, whether that be a project, writing a book, any
Mhm.
endeavor that you start, expect failure. Then if you expect failure, disappointment won't hurt you as hard, right? You're expecting to fail first time around, so you're not as disappointed. Don't give up. With failure comes disappointment, and we want to give up and say, oh, it's not for me. I have failed at many things. I had a ton of disappointment, but one thing I am is a fighter. I don't give up. I worked on my
Mhm.
marriage for 16 years, and this man was constantly coming at me daily, but I didn't want to give up. I was still trying to fix a marriage with a man that I couldn't fix a marriage with because I
Mhm.
didn't understand what I was dealing with.
Mhm.
Life is a journey. It's not a sprint. So if you plan to start an entrepreneurial endeavor, you plan to write a book, or you're starting a new project, just know that it's not going to be something that you're going to complete in a week or a few days. It may take
Mhm.
years. It's going to take time. Understand that and embrace it. Take the time to do it the right way instead of trying to throw something together really quick without doing your proper research, and then it'd be wrong. Believe in yourself. and your capabilities. I know a lot of times I've had imposter syndrome, and that's where you feel inadequate. You don't feel like you have the right skill set for consulting or whatever it is that you're delving into in your life. Believe in yourself, build your self-esteem and self-confidence. And I always tell people the best way to do that is to state daily affirmations. And so if you stand in front of the mirror morning and night and you say positive things like, I am loved, I am worthy, I am enough, or turn whatever negative thought you have about yourself into a positive, that helps to build your self-confidence and your self-esteem so that you have a strong mental mindset to continue to go on with your entrepreneurial endeavor or whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish.
You know, and a lot of people don't recognize the biology of the brain as well in the self-help industry. I think it's misled. I think it's a wonderful, self-help industry is a wonderful part of our era that we have in the past 40 years. However, it has convinced some women that it's just in my thought process. It's just, if I think differently, things can change, or there's something wrong with me because I'm not strong enough, or I need to be more confident. But that's a I've taken neuro-linguistic programming. I'm certified in that. And what you've just described with the positive affirmations, it rewires the brain. There's neuroreceptors that are alive, that are negative ones that are alive because you keep feeding it with negative thought. And they literally are a physical thing in your brain. And when you rewire it with positive or opposite thinking, which is positive thinking, then they die off and new ones are born. And that's why it takes 21 days to 3 months for a habit to stick, because those neural pathways have to change, and that's how long it takes for that to happen. And I would add another one to that is to buy your book, because it sounds like your book is juicy, full of information to help people make that transition, or maybe stay in transition within a marriage. But your book would be very helpful for that.
Yes, it's very educational. And I wrote it with education in mind. I didn't write it just to tell my sad story. I wrote it with education in mind.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I want to thank you not just for sharing your journey and your mission and your passion here on the Holly Hall Show, but I also want to thank you just for showing up in your life and doing what you have come here to do, and helping society, and the people that will gravitate towards you will be the ones that will need your help and support. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you.
Well. Acknowledgement for that. Okay, anyone, if you're listening and you resonate with this story, you might want to contact Alana Sharp through her website. I'm going to have all the information below, whether you're listening to this on Google Podcasts or Apple or YouTube, or there's about 10 different places that this is going to be going to through video and audio. All the information will be below in the information of the show for Alana Sharp. And so thank you everyone for listening, and namaste. Oh, I need my glasses to read. That was good.
Yes.
There we go. This is a brand new podcast. Please subscribe and like and share and help my channel grow.